Welcome to NTD Good Morning.
Here are today's top stories. Police identify the suspect in a church shooting in Michigan that left at least 4 people dead. This just a day after another shooting in North Carolina where an attacker killed 3 people and injured 5 others.
Forecasters are keeping a close eye on 2 major storms. Tropical storm Imelda near the Bahamas and Hurricane Umberto approaching Bermuda. Both storms could bring dangerous flooding, high winds, and hazardous surf along parts of the southeast U.S.
President Trump will meet Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu at the White House today as international pressure grows over the war in Gaza.
With a looming government shutdown just around the corner, a White House meeting set to hash out disagreements. Democrats doubling down on their demands, Republicans insisting their plan is nonpartisan.
The Pentagon is deploying 200 National Guard troops to Portland. How officials in Oregon are responding in court.
Tens of thousands of participants showed up for the annual Tunnel to Towers 5K run and walk yesterday. We take a look at the story behind the race.
This is NTD Good Morning. Live from our global headquarters in New York City, here are Stephanie Cox and Kim.
Good morning. Glad you're here with us.
Today is Monday, September 29th. This is NTD Good Morning. In today's top news, police have identified the suspect of a deadly shooting inside a church in Michigan as 40-year-old Thomas Jacob Sanford. According to military records obtained by the Detroit News, the suspect was a former Marine veteran who served in Iraq.
At least 4 people were killed in the attack. Police say the suspect was shot and killed by officers minutes after the attack.
We were on scene within 30 seconds from that original 911 call. Within 8 minutes, that suspect was neutralized in the back parking lot of the church. Ted, we're working around the clock now. So we're working tirelessly to find additional bodies.
They say the suspect drove through the doors of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints Chapel, opened fire, and then set the building ablaze. The church was quickly engulfed in flames, leaving recovery crews still unable to fully search the site.
The FBI is now leading the case, calling the violence a targeted attack. Investigators believe the gunman deliberately set the blaze using gasoline. In a social media post, President Trump wrote, "Pray for the victims and their families. This epidemic of violence in our country must end immediately." NTD's Arian Pazdar brings us more.
The incident took place during Sunday's service of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in Grand Blanc Township. Police explain how the incident played out.
He drove his vehicle through the front doors of the church. He then exited his vehicle, firing several rounds at individuals within the church.
Police also say that a fire broke out during the incident, which they believe the suspect set on purpose.
For this incident, the fire started basically the suspect. All indications on this investigation are the suspect used an accelerant of some sort, we believe gasoline, and lit the church on fire.
President Trump reacted to the incident, saying the FBI was immediately on scene and will be leading the federal investigation. This appears to be yet another targeted attack on Christians in the United States of America. According to FBI Director Kash Patel, violence in a place of worship is a cowardly and criminal act. Our prayers are with the victims and their families during this terrible tragedy. Attorney General Pam Bondi also says that such violence at a place of worship is heartbreaking and chilling. Bondi announced that she's on her way to Michigan. Arian Pazdar, NTD News.
In another incident, a suspect is in custody after a shooting in Southport, North Carolina.
The attack killed 3 people, injured 5 others. Police are calling it highly premeditated.
Southport police have identified 40-year-old Nigel Edge as the suspect. He's been charged with 3 counts of first-degree murder and 5 counts of attempted murder.
The attack started around 9:30 p.m. Saturday evening. That's when police say the suspect opened fire on an outdoor bar called the American Fish Company while on a boat outside the bar. The Coast Guard later detained the suspect.
The local district attorney said most of the victims were tourists. He described one victim as clinging to life. A local hospital confirmed that it treated 2 others and that both were stable and had been released.
The suspect is being held without bail and is scheduled to appear in court today. Police have asked any witnesses to contact them immediately.
The man charged with killing Charlie Kirk will appear in a Utah court today. 22-year-old Tyler Robinson faces aggravated murder charges, and prosecutors plan to seek the death penalty. He and his newly appointed legal counsel will decide whether they want a preliminary hearing. The judge will determine if there is enough evidence against him to go forward with a trial.
In Utah, defendants can choose to skip a preliminary hearing and go straight to an arraignment to enter their plea. Authorities say Robinson turned himself in at his hometown sheriff's office and has since revealed incriminating text messages as well as DNA evidence linking him to the killing. Robinson's lawyers declined to comment on the case ahead of today's hearing. The prosecutors did not respond to a request for comment.
And we're turning now to the latest federal deployment from the Trump administration. Federalized National Guard troops have been ordered to Portland, Oregon, following escalating tensions outside federal immigration facilities.
Secretary of War Pete Hegseth on Sunday federalized 200 Oregon National Guard troops and ordered them to Portland. President Trump says the troops will protect immigration facilities and respond to threats from Antifa, a group Trump designated as a terrorist organization last week. The deployment drew praise from some local residents who spoke to the Post Millennial.
We've been asking for help for months, and we're finally going to get it.
Federal authorities have also spoken out after recent attacks on ICE facilities, including a shooting last week.
This horrendous attack must serve as a wake-up call to the far-left media pundits and politicians demonizing our ICE law enforcement. Comparing ICE officers day in and day out to the Nazi Gestapo, the secret police, and the slave patrols has real-life consequences.
Oregon and Portland officials have filed a lawsuit challenging the federal government's authority. They argue there is no invasion, rebellion, or other danger that would justify deploying the National Guard. State leaders say the deployment could inflame tensions rather than maintain public safety. According to data from the Major Cities Chiefs Association, crime in Portland has dropped significantly this year. The planned deployment comes amid an increase of federal law enforcement in other U.S. cities, including Chicago, where federal agents patrolled downtown streets over the weekend. Violent clashes at a federal ICE facility in Broadview, Illinois have also heightened tensions. Authorities say they arrested 11 individuals over the weekend and investigated what appeared to be an explosive device near the site.
President Donald Trump, meanwhile, says he plans to attend a rare gathering of senior military officers near Washington tomorrow.
Speaking to NBC yesterday, he described the event organized by War Secretary Pete Hegseth as a chance to build camaraderie among the Pentagon's top brass.
He called it a very nice meeting and said it would be a positive opportunity to discuss how well the military is performing.
Trump and Hegseth have been reshaping U.S. military posturing, rebranding the Defense Department or the War Department, and reducing senior military positions to maximize strategic readiness.
And President Trump will meet Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu at the White House today. The meeting comes as Israel faces growing international pressure to end the war in Gaza. In a letter, hostage families have urged Trump to use the talks to secure the release of their loved ones. Trump has promised, quote, something special, saying there is a real chance for greatness in the Middle East. He did not provide details, but Vice President Vance told Fox News yesterday that top officials are in negotiations with Israeli and Arab leaders. Leaders of the Hamas terrorist group say they have not received any new proposals for a ceasefire. New York City Mayor Eric Adams announced yesterday that he's ending his re-election campaign, shaking up the race for mayor.
The constant media speculation about my future and the campaign finance board's decision to withhold millions of dollars have undermined my ability to raise the funds needed for a serious campaign. But I must also sound a warning. Extremism is growing in our politics. Our children are being radicalized to hate our city and our country. Instead, I urge New Yorkers to choose leaders not by what they promise, but by what they have delivered.
Adams had opted out of the Democratic primary to run as an independent Democrat, socialist Zohran Mamdani, who won the Democratic primary in June. He won over former New York Governor Andrew Cuomo, and Cuomo is now running as an independent.
A retired NYPD captain, Adams was elected in 2021 on a platform focused on public safety and economic recovery following the COVID-19 pandemic.
He's been struggling in the polls during his re-election campaign, trailing Mamdani, Cuomo, and Republican Curtis Sliwa. It's not clear how much Adams' exit would benefit Cuomo. And joining us to discuss Mayor Eric Adams and the New York City race for mayor is NTD News contributor Mike Leon, who is host of the podcast Can We Please Talk? Also with us is political analyst Gerard Flitty, who is senior counsel at the Lawfare Project. Good morning to you both. Thanks for joining. Mike, your initial reactions to Mayor Adams dropping out, as well as his legacy as mayor.
Yeah, good morning to both of you. First part, not shocking at all. I mean, I think a lot of people had seen a little bit of the writing on the wall. You mentioned the polling recently, Quinnipiac, Siena, all of these New York Times type polls had him at least fourth, potentially behind Curtis with respect to this race. So it's not shocking. And then obviously the campaign finance board decision, like he mentioned in the video, was really hampering him as well from getting some public matching funds. So not really shocking. In terms of legacy, I think it's a mixed bag, Carrie. I think, there's some things on the way out, especially with the DOJ charges that were eventually dropped that are going to kind of muddy some of the things. But then there are some things that he did in terms of, if you look at New York City's crime rate year over year, it's returned back down to pre-pandemic levels. So there was some good and some bad, but I don't think anybody is kind of shocked by this news.
And Gerard, your thoughts?
It's not surprising at all. We were expecting it a little bit earlier, to be honest. Polling in the single digits in a four-person race and being in last in most of the polls does not really give you a good chance of winning. And I think, as Leon said, the funding not being there, the matching funding also hampered his ability to get out the vote. He did not have an energetic campaign. And I think he fumbled in a lot of strategic points in the last few months when he could perhaps have picked up some support. Ultimately, he leaves a pretty good legacy. He did spend 4 years as a transitional mayor from de Blasio. We will see what happens next, in which direction New York City goes after this election. But I think Adams will be remembered as an old school politician, and we wait to see what happens next.
Certainly a great story, one of the New York PD's own, a captain rising to the rank of mayor. Now, Mike, we have Mamdani at about 40+%, double that of Cuomo, and Cuomo double that of Sliwa. Adams in fourth only had about 10%. But which of the three candidates do you think benefits most from Adams dropping out?
Yeah, this is the question that everyone's going to try to piggyback on and figure out, Carrie. If I had a nickel for every time somebody asked this question, I truly have no idea, because as Gerard just mentioned, the support behind Eric Adams was very, very small. And so there could be a fractured split. I mean, remember, he went against his own party on a couple different instances with respect to the Biden administration. Would that garner some Republican votes? Maybe. Would that garner some support around Cuomo? It'll be interesting to see who he endorses, because I don't think he'll endorse Mamdani. I don't think he'll endorse any of them. But I think it would be a fractured split. I truly don't think right now, like, if you were an Adams leading voter and you wanted to see that mayor reelected, I don't know who you would actually go to the ballot box in November and vote for, because his policies were a little bit fractured, let's be honest, in terms of where he would side. Sometimes he would side on the Republican side of an issue. Sometimes he would side on the Democratic side of an issue. I truly don't think, because he was running at such a low percentage support-wise, I don't know who his vote will help influence.
Got it. And Gerard, what is your thoughts on him dropping out, if it benefits anybody, or just the race in general? How is it shaping up as we start to enter into the final lap heading toward November?
I think it slightly benefits Cuomo. I think Cuomo and Adams both appeal to the same kind of more moderate centrist voters. So some of the votes will go to Cuomo, some will go to Mamdani. I think it's the energy of the campaign. I don't see much boost, if any, for Sliwa from this. I think Republicans are doing some deep soul searching on whether they should be voting for Cuomo or someone else if they don't want to see Mamdani win election. Ultimately, the fun irony here is that because Adams dropped out so late, his name will still be on the ballot, and I still expect that he will be getting some thousands of votes.
Very interesting in that respect. Now, Mike, I want to talk about New York politics, because they're a bit of a microcosm of the nation's. The Republicans sort of reborn under Trump 10 years ago. This mayoral race demonstrates a very interesting trend where you have really two flanks of the Democratic Party. You have the more centrist veteran style in Cuomo, and then you have kind of a very dynamic rising person, does great with the youth, can activate the crowd, but people are scared, frankly, of his policies. So what is happening inside of the Democratic Party, both in New York but also nationwide?
Yeah, a couple things. I would tell everybody, remember, the mayor's not a king. There's a lot of processes and hurdles that you have to go through with respect to if Mamdani wants to institute some of his policies. But, just as a New York kid, as somebody who grew up, 20 blocks away from where Mamdani went to high school at Bronx Science High, like there are some things that he is talking about that affect Black, brown, and poor communities. There's a reason why he turned out such high numbers of voters, not only in the Bronx, but in Brooklyn, in Crown Heights, in Bed-Stuyvesant, in 20, 30, 40% vote totals his way, because he's speaking to a lot of the issues that we're struggling with, which is rent stabilization, affordability crisis, public transportation. There are some things that Mamdani is going to try to execute. Everybody's, up in arms about the grocery store idea and, the one coming to each borough. And that's a pilot program, as he has mentioned a bunch. But I think the fracture is funny because Democrats are looking for some type of movement, Carrie. And here's a guy who's grassroots, walking all the way from Fort Tryon Bridge all the way down to the lower Manhattan to try to drum out more support, getting the youth vote. And Democrats are like, yeah, but we didn't come up with that, so we don't want that type of movement. And so they don't see any optics in it. And they want to go with an old veteran, who's been not scandal free in Governor Cuomo. And I just think it's funny to watch the Democrats kind of implode with respect to this, because here is a movement that they're asking for that potentially they can emulate, whether it be in other cities, whether it be in other governor races, and whether it be not only in 26, but in 28. And they just don't want to emulate any of that. And they want to go with the old guard and try to go with somebody who has had scandals with respect to New York City and is a politician that fell out of grace, let's be honest, with respect to New York politics. Doesn't even live in the city. So it's funny to watch it all play out. And I'm interested to see what happens, obviously, in November.
Yeah, fascinating points. Gerard, as Mike pointed out, none of the Democratic brass have given their endorsement to Mamdani. I believe the only one was actually Cuomo's lieutenant governor. Clearly, there's some soul searching going on. Even California Governor Gavin Newsom said that they should kind of emulate a Charlie Kirk style initiative and really focus on tapping into the youth. So how do you see this playing out, both with this race, but more broadly within the soul of and the rising stars, the voice of the Democratic Party?
I think that there are two things here, both within the Democratic Party and with the electorate at large. You have a youthful, dynamic energy that is motivating voters to come out and register for the first time and vote for the candidate of their choice. We see this with Mamdani. This is what put him over the edge in the primary, the young voter, the first-time voter. And we also saw this in the presidential election to some extent, with voters turning out, surprisingly perhaps, for Donald Trump. So we have this fracture. We have new voters coming into the system and voting for perhaps the unexpected candidate. And then we have the policy. We have the older policy, the more conservative policies of a Cuomo versus something that is new and bringing new ideas to the table, which is what Mamdani is doing. This is not new for the Democratic Party. This is something that the Democratic Party has been dealing with for many years now. Which direction is it going to go? Is it going to continue in a more conservative route, or is it shifting more progressive with bolder and more innovative ideas to tackle problems? And this is playing out in New York City, as one would expect, at the local level first.
A lot to look out for. The deadline to it all is mounting, and soon it will all be revealed. We'll be watching very closely. Appreciate both of your insights this morning. Mike Leon, Gerard Filitti, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Still to come, two big Atlantic storms on the move.
Tropical storm Imelda expected to become a hurricane early this week, while Bermuda braces for Hurricane Umberto. We're going to have more with that.
And with a looming government shutdown potentially around the corner, a White House meeting is set to hash out disagreements. Democrats doubling down on their demands, Republicans insisting their plan is nonpartisan. Those stories after this. As we move into the tail end of the Atlantic hurricane season, forecasters are monitoring two big storms.
Tropical storm Imelda has formed near the Bahamas. It's expected to strengthen into a hurricane as it moves north.
Imelda has already brought heavy rain and flash flooding to parts of the Bahamas. Totals could reach up to 10 inches in isolated areas, prompting officials to warn residents in low-lying regions. The Weather Channel says Imelda may bring heavy rain to parts of the southeast, including Charleston, South Carolina, and Wilmington, North Carolina, as it curves eastward over the coming days.
Meanwhile, Hurricane Umberto, a Category 4 storm approaching Bermuda. Forecasters say it will generate dangerous surf and rip currents as it passes west off the island, which should happen tomorrow. Tropical storm watch is in effect, and the island's Emergency Measures Organization is closely monitoring this storm. Umberto is expected to weaken gradually, but it could still create hazardous surf and rip currents along the entire east coast.
And in Arizona, restoration efforts are underway in the city of Globe. Catastrophic flooding on Saturday spread massive debris through the city. 4 people are dead and several others are still missing. Globe is a small mining town about 90 miles east of Phoenix. 3 people were found dead in or near vehicles. Another was found in the floodwaters.
Around 1,000 propane tanks were dislodged and sent floating throughout the area. Fortunately, none of the tanks exploded or caught fire in the chaos.
The Globe City Council declared an emergency, and Arizona's governor also declared an emergency for Gila County and has approved National Guard deployments and rescue efforts are underway. A government shutdown is possible beginning midnight Tuesday as Democrats double down on their demands.
President Trump is expected to meet with lawmakers today to work out their disagreements. NTD's Melina Weiskup brings us the latest.
The clock is running out to avert a government shutdown. Democrats say if Republicans want the votes, they'll be forced to repeal parts of the recently passed Big Beautiful Bill. They're also demanding Republicans to extend tax subsidies for Obamacare.
In order to find a bipartisan path forward to fund the government, avoid a reckless Republican shutdown, and deal with the healthcare crisis that Republicans have created.
Republicans insist negotiations can happen after their 7-week short-term funding bill expires.
We didn't add a single partisan priority or policy rider at all. We're operating completely in good faith to give more time. The only thing that would gut health care, using his own phraseology there, is if we took Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer's demand here, because they want to cut $50 billion from rural hospitals.
The short-term extension passed the House but failed in the Senate. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer insisting that the White House hear out his demands before any Democrats get on board.
We need a real negotiation, that you don't do this by one party putting together a completely partisan bill and saying take it or leave it.
President Trump is expected to meet with congressional leaders later today. If an agreement isn't reached by Tuesday at midnight, the government will shut down, and the administration plans to lay off more federal workers. Education department leaders already announced its plans. The agency will furlough most of its employees. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Melina Weiskup, NTD News.
Missouri's Governor Mike Kehoe has signed a new congressional map into law. It could deliver Republicans and boost in the House going into next year's midterms. The new map will likely help the GOP flip at least one Democratic seat and give Republicans a 7-to-1 advantage in Missouri's delegation. Trump yesterday called the plan, quote, fantastic, saying it will help send another MAGA Republican to Congress. Democratic Congressman Emanuel Cleaver criticized the move for using Troost Avenue as a boundary line, a street that he says historically segregated black and white residents. Some residents west of the new dividing line would be shifted into a district held by a Republican representative. Opponents are gathering signatures for a statewide referendum on this new map. They're also pursuing lawsuits to block the map. Kehoe defended the new map, arguing it reflects Missouri's conservative values in Washington.
And a China-based drone maker will remain on the Pentagon's blacklist of companies tied to Beijing's military. A federal judge in Washington, D.C. has dismissed DJI's lawsuit challenging the designation. District Judge Paul Friedman ruled that the Pentagon finding that DJI contributes to China's defense industrial base is backed by substantial evidence. He added that the company's technology has both substantial theoretical and actual military applications. DJI is a private company headquartered in Shenzhen. It sells more than half of all commercial drones in the U.S. The firm sued the Pentagon in October 2024 after it was placed on the list of Chinese military companies operating in the United States. DJI called the designation unlawful and misguided, saying it's neither owned nor controlled by China's military. And a stowaway found dead aboard an American Airlines flight. The body was discovered in the landing gear after the plane landed at Charlotte Douglas International Airport in North Carolina. Authorities say maintenance staff found the body yesterday while servicing the aircraft. Police officers responded and pronounced the individual dead. Police have opened an investigation with crime scene teams collecting evidence. American Airlines told Fox News it's cooperating fully with law enforcement. Officials say the case remains active and ongoing, with more details expected to be released. Next, Typhoon Bualoi tore through Vietnam's coast early this morning local time, killing at least 12 people and leaving 17 missing.
Strong winds and rain damaged houses, knocked out power, and flooded roads before losing its strength on its way toward Laos.
Vietnam's National Weather Agency said the storm had moved along the northern central coastline before making landfall, causing waves as high as 26 feet.
The government evacuated more than 28,000 people yesterday while canceling and delaying hundreds of flights and closing down 4 airports in the central provinces.
Rainfall in parts of the country is expected to reach nearly 20 inches, with authorities issuing warnings of severe floods and landslides.
Typhoon Bualoi killed at least 10 people last week in the Philippines. And now to India. Locals in a southern Indian town say an actor turned politician's late entry to a political meeting was the reason for a deadly stampede that killed 39 people. Locals say that the crowd kept growing ahead of Vijay's appearance. The stop was part of his campaign for his party ahead of state elections next year. Officials have appointed a commission led by a retired judge to investigate the cause. The chief minister of the state, M.K. Stalin, announced 1 million rupees in compensation for the affected families. That's more than 11,000 US dollars.
Up ahead, in his new memoir, Under Siege, Eric Trump reveals the unprecedented attacks his family has faced and why he says their fight is about saving the nation.
And tens of thousands of participants, including Steph, showed up for the annual Tunnel to Towers 5K run and walk yesterday. We take a look at the story behind the race. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back to NTD Good Morning. I'm Carrie Dunst. If you're just joining us now, here's some of today's top headlines. Police have identified the suspect in the Michigan church shooting as 40-year-old Thomas Sanford. Authorities say at least 4 people died after Sanford opened fire inside the church and set it on fire. The FBI is now leading the investigation, treating the incident as a targeted act of violence. President Trump called for an end to what he called an epidemic of violence in the U.S. The Pentagon is deploying 200 Oregon National Guard troops to Portland to protect immigration facilities as well as respond to threats. Some local residents welcome the move, saying they had been asking for help for months. The Department of Homeland Security called recent attacks on an ICE facility a wake-up call. Oregon and Portland officials have filed a lawsuit challenging the National Guard deployment, saying there is no emergency that justifies sending in troops. And President Trump is expected to meet with lawmakers later today to work out disagreements as the threat of a government shutdown now looms. Wednesday is the deadline. Democrats want parts of the big, beautiful bill repealed, and they are demanding an extension to tax subsidies for Obamacare. Meanwhile, Republicans say negotiations can happen after their short-term funding bill expires, which recently passed the House but failed in the Senate. If an agreement isn't reached by tomorrow at midnight, the administration says it plans to lay off more federal workers. And staying with President Trump, he will meet with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu at the White House today as Israel faces growing international isolation and pressure to end the war in Gaza. The families of hostages have urged Trump to use this meeting to secure their loved ones' release from Hamas. Trump promised something special on a Gaza plan. He did not provide any details, though. Vice President Vance says top U.S. officials are engaged in negotiations with Israel as well as Arab leaders. Those are this morning's top headlines. With that, Steph, over to you.
Thank you, Carrie. In a new memoir titled Under Siege, President Trump's son, Eric, offers a first-hand account of his family's fight to, in his words, save the nation. NTD's Daniel Monahan has takeaways from Eric Trump's recent interview on American thought leaders with Jan Jekielek.
Eric Trump says he has long been deeply involved in his family's legacy. One moment he recalls vividly was being handed the reins of the Trump Organization when his father went to Washington, and the legal troubles that soon followed.
I became the most subpoenaed person in arguably American history. I got 112 subpoenas in a very short period of time. And these are like big subpoenas, right? From Senate, from Congress, from the biggest AGs in the country, DAs in the country.
He says Under Siege details thousands of behind-the-scenes stories of how opponents tried to dismantle his family in what he calls the greatest political movement in American history.
They wanted to see our family out of business. They wanted to see us bankrupt. They wanted to see my father in jail. They wanted to see me in jail. They wanted to see the Trump name off of every building around the globe. They wanted to break up our relationships. They wanted to break up the family ties I have with my siblings. They wanted to break up his relationship with Melania. You know, they raided our homes. They tried to impeach him. They, again, stripped him off of social media. I mean, Boko Haram, the Ayatollah, the Taliban, you know, Hezbollah, they all had Twitter accounts. But guess who couldn't? If the 45th president of the United States, he couldn't have a Facebook account.
Trump discussed the attempts on his father's life and the assassination of his friend Charlie Kirk, accusing the left of resorting to violence when they can't win with the power of their ideas.
It's crazy the times that we live in. Never did I think that the country would get to this point. At the same time, I can tell you universally, people are sick and tired of the games and nonsense, and they're all seeing it. And I think that's why you've had the mass exodus from the Democratic Party in this country.
Trump says the so-called radical left isn't hiding who they are anymore.
We know exactly who they are. You know, they're the ones who will call you a fascist, yet sit on a rooftop in all black, you know, holding a sniper rifle, you know, and shoot somebody who's peacefully exercising their First Amendment right.
The first son says he was on the steps of the courthouse every day during his father's New York trials, yelling and screaming about how rigged the whole case was.
And I remember after 34 felony convictions, he turned around, shook my hand, we walked out together. He looked at me, he goes, I don't know how, but we're going to win.
As for going into politics himself, Trump says he'll never rule anything out, but he's not someone who needs to be in the spotlight. But Trump acknowledges the need for true leaders in government instead of career politicians.
The person who's never signed the front of a check is writing legislation that's going to apply to every business and every person in our country. The person that doesn't know the first thing about healthcare is making decisions for the lives of millions of people. It doesn't seem to compute. You see all these, 20-year-old kids who get into politics, i.e. Joe Biden, and they're in politics for 50 years and then they become president, and you wonder why our country is totally dysfunctional.
But he says getting titans of business like his dad to make the necessary sacrifices is no easy task.
There's not a lot of courageous people out there, truly, of the Fortune 500 crowd, and very few of them would say, listen, I'm going to sacrifice all of it to run against 16 Republicans who actually know a damn about, right, know something about politics, which we did not, and then have to run against somebody like Hillary Clinton, one of the great political dynasties of modern times, only in the off chance of being able to win at a 5-to-1 financial deficit, self-funding your whole campaign. Like, give me another billionaire who would agree to those terms. Zero, right?
Some of the proceeds of the book Under Siege will go to Turning Point USA in the memory of Charlie Kirk.
They thought they could silence us. They thought they could just remove his voice with, a $1 bullet. They were wrong. They can't do that. And in fact, it's a law of unintended consequences that the exact opposite is happening. I think our voice is stronger than it's ever been right now.
Under Siege, My Family's Fight to Save Our Nation by Eric Trump will be released worldwide on October 14th. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
Coming up, the federal EV tax credit ends tomorrow. An automotive expert tells us what you need to know if you're in the market for an electric vehicle.
And tens of thousands of participants showed up for the annual Tunnel to Towers 5K run and walk yesterday. Take a look at the story behind the race. We'll be right back. Welcome back to NTD Good Morning. Tens of thousands gathered in New York City yesterday for one of the nation's largest 5K runs, the Tunnel to Towers. It honors the first responders and service members who gave their lives on September 11th and in the years that followed.
I took part in that run alongside NTD's Tiffany Meyer. Check it out.
3, 2, 1.
Tens of thousands took to the streets of New York City Sunday for the Tunnel to Towers 5K, one of the nation's largest 5K runs.
They've come from all across the country to remember friends, family, and neighbors, and to honor the nation they call home.
Paying respect to first responders, servicemen and women, and the heroes of 9/11.
Through the Brooklyn Battery Tunnel, 30,000 folks run, walk, and roll, carrying the memory of loved ones and the legacy of every hero who gave it all.
Means a lot. Representing my brothers and sisters in arms, representing my brothers and sisters on the job in the fire department.
How can you argue with supporting our first responders and veterans? So they are just wonderful organizations.
That were first responder firefighters, so.
Yeah, and one is still in the reserves, almost 20 years.
Coast Guard.
Coast Guard. So yeah, this means something to us.
They're all good people. They're good peoples.
Yeah.
People coming together, the camaraderie, it's the only time of the year where I feel like everybody can really feel close.
The race follows the steps of firefighter Stephen Siller. On 9/11, with the tunnel closed, he strapped on 60 pounds of gear and ran to the Twin Towers. He made it there, but he never came home.
Would he have gone through and gone up West Street and into the South Tower if he knew that he was going to die? Yes, he would have.
In his name, the Tunnel to Towers Foundation builds mortgage-free homes for families of fallen first responders and service members.
There's so much under the hood with Tunnel to Towers, with helping veterans, mortgages, homeless veterans. So, to give money to a place it's going directly to the right spot is huge for us.
It makes an amazing difference. I think every first responder, anybody in the military who goes to do their job, never in the back of their mind, if something ever happened to them, knows that a foundation like this is here to take care of their family.
Crossing the finish line with so many here is a reminder to all of us
That through darkness, there's always light and the promise to never forget. In New York City, I'm Stephanie Cox.
And I'm Tiffany Meyer, and thanks for running with NTD.
Gosh, that was a really powerful event actually to participate in. One of the organizers came over and asked me if I teared up along the way, and I had to admit, yes, I teared up quite a few times because that feeling of camaraderie was just amazing. You had all these people lining the streets, memorials along the way, but people thanking us, servicemen and women also thanking us, police officers lining the way, holding placards with people's faces, as you'd seen, who'd perished. But they were thanking us, and we're thanking them, really. And, it's just this wonderful moment where you realize that we all do really care about each other, and we're there for each other. And another beautiful moment was an FDNY ferry came along the Hudson River and spouted water fountains into the air, and it was such a glorious, beautiful day out that it, turned into a rainbow right there above the ferry, and it was just really powerful, actually.
Now I'm starting to tear up and get goosebumps, but my father texted me that morning because it rained hard the night before. The forecast was uncertain, but it ended up being just a beautiful day.
That's it.
Just a perfect day, and what a tribute to the memory of the spirit of that firefighter. He had, I think, 5 siblings. He had 5 children. He was on his way to a golf game, and he immediately dropped everything, ran to the tunnel, ran to get his gear, drove to the tunnel to go through the Battery Tunnel, and it was closed. So he just ran through the tunnel, and as the package said, he gave his life saving other people's lives, which is, I think, for a first responder, that is their heart. You don't do it for the money, you do it to help your community.
And another aspect of this was actually the religion was quite present in that he was, his family was, walked in the footsteps of or, cherished Francis of Assisi. I believe in his, teaching was about, while there's time, let us do good. So that was kind of like blasted everywhere along all the banners and just let us do good. And I think that's just something that everybody can get behind. So one of those universal things that just resonates, Fantastic.
Great work from you and Tiffany and the whole crew going and supporting them. And it's wonderful that the service people that you're there to honor, they were thanking you for coming. So
Yeah.
such a heartfelt moment. So fantastic.
So thanks for watching and participating with us. Next up, Europe has retained the Ryder Cup after holding off a late surge from Team USA at Bethpage Black in New York.
European players filmed a video for President Trump, who attended the Cup after their victory.
Are you watching Are you watching Donald Trump? Are you watching Donald Trump?
The Americans faced the largest deficit in competition history entering Sunday's singles matches, down 7 points after the first 2 days. They rallied to earn 7.5 points on the final day, but it wasn't enough to overcome Europe's lead. European captain Luke Donald was praised for his team's performance, while American captain Keegan Bradley accepted responsibility for the loss.
Approximately 50,000 fans attended, with energy and excitement growing as the U.S. made its comeback push. President Trump became the first sitting president to attend a Ryder Cup when he visited with his granddaughter, Kaya Trump, on Friday. He was greeted with a chorus of cheers when he flew over the course on Air Force One and when he arrived.
And of course, Kai is an avid golfer, and they sometimes golf together, as we learned in previous months when she came out to speak on his behalf and in his favor. Okay, next up, the federal tax credit on electric vehicles ends tomorrow, marking the last chance for buyers to claim these savings. After September 30th, buyers can still save on new American assembled vehicles with a tax deduction of up to $10,000 in auto loan interest, aimed at supporting U.S. jobs. Joining us live to discuss it all is Lauren Fix, an automotive expert from Car Coach Reports. Good morning, Lauren.
Good morning.
Good to have you with us today. How will the expiration of the $7,500 EV tax credit on September 30 impact EV pricing and consumer demand in the short term?
Well, the demand was always falsified by offering the $7,500 tax credit, which just kept modifying. Initially, it was any electric car, and then near the end, it kept changing to American-built cars. So where we are now is if you're thinking you'd like to buy a Tesla or any American-built or any electric vehicle, you can still get one. If you place your order by September 30th, which is tomorrow, Tuesday, you take delivery even if it's into October because the vehicle's being built, whether it be a Hyundai Ioniq 5 or a Ford Mach-E, you'll still be able to get that tax credit. And if you're really smart and you purchase an American built vehicle like a Mach-E or a Tesla, which is all built in America, you'll be able to add on that tax credit from the one big beautiful bill that President Trump signed on July 4th. And so you can actually double them up. So anyone who's really paying attention, who makes under $250,000, you can take advantage of both. And most people aren't in that position. But if you're a single, you're making $100,000 per year or up to 150. It's a sliding scale. You have to get an accountant to look at it. But basically, you'll have to fill out a 1098Q form. And that form will put your vehicle identification number on when you do your taxes. And it'll give you that break on taxes at the end of the year. So it's really great. So that plus the $7,500 is someone who's very smart. So remember that a vehicle has to be built in North America, or I'm sorry, in the USA in order to get that. So a car that's built in Canada or Mexico will not comply. But Tesla builds here, Ford does, General Motors does, Hyundai completes their assembly here, even some Mercedes vehicles. It's a very long list. And I have that all on Car Coach Reports. You can see it's quite long, but make sure you check it before you sign that bottom line.
Excellent tips. Good to know where you can look further. And how does the new One Big Beautiful Bill Act differ from the old EV tax credit, particularly in terms of the 1098Q form and income-based deductions? You were digging into that a little.
Okay, so if you want to buy an electric car and you find something on the lot, and there's lots of vehicles, the sales have not been what they thought. Car manufacturers kind of knew that. They took a loss on each one. But remember, they were in a tough position. Either take a loss on every car or get fined billions of dollars from the federal government. So that's now off the table through the CRA, the Congressional Review Act, which we have covered that. And one of the things that's really important is if you want an electric car, it's $7,500 of tax credit. So people think, oh, I just take that price off the price of the vehicle. Not exactly. So you have to owe at least $7,500 in federal taxes. Now, there were some states that joined as well: California, New York, New Jersey, Illinois. But many of those states ran out of money. And California was the first one to run out of existing tax credit money. So if you had purchased an electric car, which Gavin Newsom wants to be all electric, which is now completely out the window, he also had said at one point that he was going to fund it through tax dollars, which that again he realizes he can't do because they were in a negative position across the entire state. So you can use all those tax credits and add them up. If you don't owe that much in taxes, then the money goes away. So what's going to happen? Tax credit goes away on Tuesday, and there's going to be some amazing deals. Although I highly recommend that you lease and do not purchase one. If you look at websites like iSee Cars or Auto Trader or any of these where they show the value of cars down the road, the electric vehicles are horrible. You will lose 60 to 70% of the value. That's really bad when you purchase a vehicle thinking, I'm going to use it 3 to 5 years and then I'll get rid of it. Well, at that point, the battery needs to be replaced. So it's like buying a used iPhone. You don't know how that person used that phone or that car in this case. Did they charge it all the time? Did they cycle the battery? Does it need to be replaced? And so because of that, it causes people to rethink these used vehicles. And that's why people are looking at used gasoline and hybrid vehicles, which have gone up in value while electric vehicles have gone down in value. So lease an EV, do not buy one.
Good to know. Now, with these incentives shifting from purchase credits to tax deductions, do you think buyers will be more motivated to buy new EVs, used EVs, hybrid you mentioned, or even just traditional cars?
Well, the car manufacturers are very aware of what's going on. They never wanted to build electric vehicles because it took a loss on every single one. So they're building a lot of hybrids. We're seeing a lot of plug-in hybrids from every brand. Now, one thing that's important to note, if you want that tax credit from the one big beautiful bill, again, has to be finished assembled in the USA. So without that, it doesn't apply. I will tell you that any of these electric vehicles sitting on lots, dealers are begging to get rid of them. So if you really want an electric vehicle, take advantage of that. Remember that the tax credit for charging stations to be put into your home have to be installed by the end of the year in order to get that $1,000 tax credit. But it's also super important that if you install an electric charger, whether it be outside or inside, you have to let your insurance company know, because if something happens, and we've had a lot of these happen across the country, there's a fire or a situation, whether it be the car or the charger, the insurance company will not stand behind it because you didn't let them know. To them, in the eyes of the insurance company, it's the same as putting an addition on. You know, we put a bathroom and a main bedroom on. Well, you would call and say, hey, we expanded our house so we can get coverage. In this case, an electric charger is super important that you let them know.
Thank you so much for your insight today. Lauren Fix, good to speak with you as always.
Thank you.
Great tips there from Lauren.
Yeah, certainly so. Take note and stay with us. We've got much more coming up in the next hour.